This is the moment that was years in the making. President Obama visiting Cuba, the first sitting president to do so in nearly 90 years.
He was joined by the rest of the first family on this trip. They toured Old Havana before making their way to a hotel near the U.S. Embassy.
Once there, in front of embassy staff, the president took a moment to mark the occasion and to express his hope that this will begin a new era between Cuba and America.
But there was controversy before the president arrived in Cuba. Hours before, the Cuban government cracked down on dissidents. Several members of the well-known Ladies in White were arrested. The president's first moment in Cuba, they were quite busy.
And he won't be slowing down. He has quite the packed schedule over the next couple of days. We have live team coverage of this historic visit. Let's begin with our colleague Calvin Hughes, live in Havana. Calvin.
Lord, the U.S. and Cuban governments are writing a new chapter to their long and complicated history. That new era began today when Air Force One touched down just after 4 o'clock at Jose Marti International Airport. It's a day so many here on the island and so many back at home thought that they would never live to see.
Back in 1928, President Coolidge came on a battleship. It took him 3 days to get here. It only took me 3 hours.
History in the sky. For the first time in 88 years, an American president arrives in Cuba. This afternoon, Air Force One touching down at Jose Marti Airport as President Obama begins his journey in Cuba. The president arrived to cloudy conditions and pouring rain, walking off the plane holding an umbrella for himself and the First Lady Michelle, joined also by his daughters Sasha and Malia and his mother-in-law. The first family greeted by Cuba's top foreign minister, Bruno Rodriguez, and other dignitaries, and given flowers. The president bringing along a delegation that included House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and 3 members of the U.S. Senate. The president shaking hands before getting into his limo that has been called the Beast. After a few minutes, the president and his motorcade left the airport. The president was planning to go to the U.S. Embassy to talk with staff members, and there was a crowd of supporters waiting to greet him.
It's an amazing experience to have the President of the United States 1 block away of you.
I'm glad that you had a chance to bring your families here because I always like taking pictures with kids. That's the future that we hope for. Young American children, young Cuban children, by the time they're adults, our hope is that they think it's natural that a U.S. president should be visiting Cuba.
The president talked with embassy workers at the Malia Havana Hotel. The president not letting the rain put a damper on his plan to tour Old Havana. You can see the president and his daughters take a walk through the favorite tourist destination. Crowds cheered for President Obama as he walked into a cathedral in Old Havana. The reaction, a vast difference to decades of frosty relations between the two nations. The president waving several times before making his way into the white stone cathedral, where he met with Cardinal Jaime Ortega. After touring the museum and cathedral, Local 10 catching the presidential motorcade on the move. The first family had dinner at the San Cristobal restaurant before heading to the Chief of Missions residence for the night.
We've got a lot of proud Americans here, but we also have a lot of proud Cubans. So, come on down.
Now, San Cristobal is a paladar, which is a family-operated business here, and it is a growing part of Cuba's private sector. So it appears even dinner is sending a message and designed to send a message from the president during his 2 days here on the island. And there was a major story happening today, even before the president arrived. And my colleague here, Hatzavella, was on top of this story. It is members of the Ladies in White. They were arrested, all of them, in front of a church in Miramar. And you just got off the phone with the leader of the Ladies in White, Berta Soler.
That's right, Calvin. I just spoke to Berta Soler. She tells me she is comfortably resting at home, was released, she says, at around 9 o'clock this evening. I also asked her about Antonio Rodiles, who was also one of the dissidents arrested. She says that he's also out of jail, that he has one of his fingers was injured, but they're all okay. All started with a peaceful march that turned ugly really quickly. Hours before President Obama arrives in Cuba, women are dragged, others screaming at each other, and what some argue was all carefully orchestrated. Castro supporters out of nowhere show up.
Son mercenarios. ¿Ustedes saben por qué?
She says these people are mercenaries paid by the imperialist government, meaning America.
Cuba sí, Castro no.
Anti-Castro protesters get rowdy in the Miramar neighborhood. But it didn't start this way. This is what they do every Sunday, a peaceful march by ladies in white and other dissidents after attending Mass at Santa Rita Catholic Church on Palm Sunday. Leader Berta Soler sending a message to the world that they're women who fight for liberty. We asked President Obama, she says, that he demand the Cuban government stop the police violence and that they free political prisoners. Activist Antonio Rodiles walked to the protest, pointing to the park where he says Cuban military dressed in plain clothing meet and wait for them.
Estos 45 domingos han sido extremadamente violentos.
He says it's been 45 violent Sundays. One thing is clear, though, both Rodiles and Soler will be looking forward to the president's speech, which is on Tuesday morning. Calvin.
Tuesday morning, but let's talk about tomorrow. The President's Day begins with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Jose Marti Memorial just outside the Plaza de Revolucion. That begins just after 10 o'clock, and then his day will end with a state dinner with President Raul Castro at the Revolutionary Palace. We have you covered every step of the way. It is going to be about an 11-hour day for the president tomorrow, and then of course on Tuesday he has that big speech that you talked about,
it's a big
a
day.
meeting with the dissidents, and then of course the baseball game, the Tampa Bay Rays against the Cuban national baseball team. A rubber match. Right now they're tied 1-1 in terms of victories. So I'll send it back to you after that. We'll see you tomorrow morning, Lori and Janine.
Calvin Hatzel, I have one question for you. I know Berta Soler was invited, we believe, by the president to meet with him, but there was some talk. I was reading reports that she may not attend. I know, Hatzel, you had the opportunity to speak with her. What did she tell you?
At this point, she's not really saying what she's going to do. We know that she and Rodiles both likely have been folks who have been invited by the White House to visit with the president, but she hasn't said. I don't think she's made up her mind yet. We'll see. It'll be interesting not only to see what she decides, but also to see whether they're even allowed to leave their homes. Typically, they're arrested before they get to these locations.
And Janine, if I can just add to that very quickly, just a footnote, we have a preliminary list of the dissidents who are going to be meeting with the president, but we expect another list to come out confirming who those dissidents
Official
are,
list, yes.
perhaps after the meeting, if not right before the meeting. So of course we'll share that with you back there in South Florida.
Nothing is official until it happens tomorrow. We have you both there for us. Thank you.